Hello, good morning, year 5 and 6. I hope you're well. Okay, so thinking back to yesterday with Miss Wilson, you looked at creating a story map. You've also, on Monday, looked at an overview of the story, some of the key events of the book, The Viewer. Now, today we're going to turn our attention to our final outcome. So we're going to have a little review of the book, little think about what we think the book was about, a little think about some of the things that happen, and then we're going to start to think about how we can change the story. Okay, what have we learned about the story that means that we could create our own version? So you're going to start planning for your final outcome. Remember, your final outcome is to retell the story as a different character. And by the end of today's lesson, you're going to have a really good understanding of what your story is going to look like. So, on Monday, you went through this with Mrs. Wilson. So, you looked at what happened in the beginning, the build up, problem, the resolution, and then the ending. Now, yesterday you turned that into a story map. Some of those look great. What we're going to do today is we're going to take these first three, sections, and we're going to look at how we can change it. So you're going to look at the beginning, you're going to look at finding the viewer, and then we're going to look at the initial problem. And that's what your final outcome is going to be. Okay, so a short story, and our short story is going to end on a bit of a cliffhanger around the point where your character is going to decide whether they look at the viewer again. So we're going to leave it on a should they look again type of cliffhanger. Now, in the main story, Tristan ends up by giving into the Viewmaster potentially. He's gone, okay, and in the story there are these viewers, and we can see those, okay, with lots of different. So this one here, but there is always this gap. So as Tristan gets drawn in, okay, does he then become part of that? Then there's this new slide. So my understanding of the story is that Tristan may not be the first person who's ever looked in this viewer and been taken into it. So I think lots of people through history have looked into this viewer. So what you're going to create your story around is the idea that after Tristan, somebody else is going to end up finding the Viewmaster and going through a similar experience to Tristan. So trying to understand it, trying to pick out what there is in there, and then getting drawn into this mysterious object. So Tristan's mum, what is she going to do? Okay, is she going to keep the Viewmaster? She's probably going to throw it away, get rid of it. She doesn't know what it is. She probably has no idea that Tristan may have been drawn into this weird and wonderful machine. So what you're going to do is you're going to take these first parts. Now the main ideas within there are we're introduced to a character within the beginning, okay, and then we find out about a main setting where we find the Viewmaster. So in this case, in the story's case, we're introduced to Tristan, and then we find out about the city dump. Then we get introduced to the Viewmaster, we find out how he finds it, and then we start to have a little look. Then the problem is revealed, that chaotic and destructive scenes are shown, which then presents our character with a dilemma. Do they look do they not? So, your job today is going to be to create your version, okay? And I want you to think about this carefully. I don't want you to just write the first thing that comes to your head. I want you to think, what is going to work as a story? You need to develop your character, okay? You can't just have a random person. We found out about Tristan, he's really curious, and that's why he's looking at things. What's the reason that your character is going to pick this thing up, going to look at that thing? Okay, where is your character going to find it? So, I want you to think about these things today. I want you to think about your main character. And like I said, who are they? Why are they going to be looking for something and stumble across or find the Viewmaster? And the setting, where are they going to find it? Okay, so it's not going to be the city dump. We're going to think about some ideas in a moment about around where that might be. Okay. Then we're going to start thinking about the build-up. Okay. They find this mysterious box, so we know where they're going to find it, but then we think about how they're going to find it. Okay. And then we try it, and we are all of us, going to describe the first scene, which is a storm. Okay. And that will then lead us into the problem. So looking at disc 1, and what do they say, how could you describe it? So we'll look back at the story and think about how they describe it. They don't go into huge amounts of detail about what period in history it is. The illustrations allow us to do that. So we're going to have to think about how we can cleverly get across those ideas without the use of the illustration. Okay, and then we're going to end with a cliffhanger. So we're going to end our story at the point where the character, your character, has a dilemma. They have this two sides of the story, two options, two things, and they are fighting themselves to think, should they look again at the viewer? Okay, so here are some of my ideas. If I was going to create this story, this is what I would do. And you could use some of these if you're really struggling. So I want you to think about these. I want it to try and work as a story, okay? It needs to try and fit the viewer. So I've not got robots finding the viewer, I've not got aliens finding the viewer. Okay, that's not what this story is about. This story, okay, we have to follow the same pattern but just change things slightly. So my story is going to be around a young girl, and she's fascinated with inventing things. She wants to be an inventor, so she's always finding objects that she could use in her inventions. How can she take things from the past, old broken things, but then use the parts and turn them into her own inventions? And she's always looking through car boot sales and antique shops for objects that she could use in her inventions. So the young girl in my story is not fascinated by the city dump, okay? She's fascinated by antique shops, old shops filled from floor to ceiling with interesting old objects, okay? And that is where she's going to end up finding the viewer. So she's looking in an old antique shop, and what we need to make sure is the place that we're choosing to replace the dump, the place where the Viewmaster is going to be found, we need lots of opportunities for description. Okay, so an antique shop is a really good one because there are lots of interesting objects. Okay, but you think about where yours could be. Okay, maybe you're going to change your character and your reason that she's looking for this or these things, but you want to keep the antique shop, and that's absolutely fine. I don't want yours to be identical to mine, but take ideas from it by all means. So then she finds the Viewmaster. She's looking at the Viewmaster in a dark corner. Okay, she thinks it was broken, but could be useful. So she encourages the man. She buys it really cheaply. So once she gets it home, she finds the slides, sees the storm. Okay, and then she becomes scared, wants to learn how it works because she's seen this thing. She's seen a couple of slides. She's seen it's a flashback in history, and she thinks she can be the first person to invent a time machine. So that's her reason for looking at the viewer. So she's seen the storm, but she really wants to look. She really wants to put the slides in and have a look what's on them. But then she sees these terrible things, and I'm going to be describing things linked to climate change and deforestation. Okay, so I've chosen quite a modern, quite a recent problem. Okay, and that's what she's going to be seeing and describing, and I'll end with, will she look again? Okay, so throughout the rest of this week and into next week, so we're going to be putting together our final outcome. We're going to be looking at each of these sections each day so that you're going to put together, okay, your final outcome. You'll then have a chance to edit it, improve it, and then you'll write your final outcome on Thursday next week. So have a great day. I look forward to seeing your ideas. I look forward to seeing your plan, and I will get back to you later through Class Dojo.